I think, or in the UK, it's something like 4-1 male to female ratio of suicide. Now, so why is it not only that a lot of
Wow.
people are taking their own life, but why is it that men are doing it a lot more than women? Now, I think there's a lot to that, but one of those things is that women find more spaces to talk generally, whereas men look at the gym. Often you'll have women might go in together with their friends and they'll work out and they'll maybe grab a coffee. A lot of men will be hood up, earphones, do the weights, listen, go home. Now, nothing wrong with that, but that kind of gives you a picture of often what men are like.
We believe that you are strong by design, and you were made in God's image to have a strong body, mind, and spirit. You're listening to the #1 strength and health authority podcast in the world. So let's get ready to unlock your potential and transform your life in today's episode. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Strong by Design podcast show. Coach Chris Wilson here hosting today. We are delighted to have you on this particular episode because we're going to be talking about all things manly, and this is obviously right in my wheelhouse, but not from a, not from like a teenage or juvenile perspective, more from a what it means to be a man and to be a whole man, to feel complete, to have a life of purpose and direction, and to have a support system in place. And so really tapping into your potential as a man and the need for more men in the world, because we know there's a little bit of a crisis happening, a little bit of a shortage of good, strong men stepping up and stepping out into the world and being bold. So I have a great guest and a new friend of mine. I was recently on his podcast a few weeks back. Great conversation that we have. And of course, you're going to find out the name of his podcast and his whole platform as we go here. So feel free to go check that out whenever you would like. But we just really enjoyed each other's company and said, geez, I got to have you as a guest on our podcast. And let's just keep this going, So sometimes in life, that's what happens. You connect with somebody. It's a genuine, a reciprocal kind of thing that happens where you just really enjoy what you're talking about. You enjoy the company that you're in, and you don't want to let that go away necessarily, even though there's about 1,000 or 1,500 miles that separates us. So, but thankfully for the world we live in today, we can still connect. So I'll get to our very special guest in just a minute. I always like to take a bit of a time here in the early part of the episode to say thank you to all of our past listeners on the Strong by Design podcast for coming back, for choosing our podcast. God knows there's so many good ones out there. I listened to about 10 or 12 on the regular in my rotation. So the fact that we've caught your ear, or you've continued to come back and download our episodes, it really means a lot to us. We're forever grateful that we're reaching, and not just a few people, but hundreds, if not thousands of people per episode. And that's really encouraging. And the show has really grown quite a bit here over the years. So we're just, really thankful for you returning. And if you're a new listener of the show, we hope you'll continue to come back for more as we keep rolling here with a new episode every week. And if you go back about 5 years worth of episodes, we are going to be reaching we're in our 5th season. We'll be hitting our 6th season here on the podcast around, actually, once this releases, it'll be into our 6th season. And we're going to hit 300 episodes this year. It's just really exciting. And so thank you for joining us today. So our very special guest, and we went over name pronunciation prior to hitting record because I wanted to get it right, because people like when you say their name correctly. I'll tell you, I remember when you're a kid and there's a kid in your class growing up, and you got somebody on the loudspeaker or making an announcement who's not familiar with that kid, and they just blow up and decimate that poor kid's name. And you're just sitting there shaking your head like, I could say it better, and I'm 7. You know what I mean? Like, you just killed this poor kid's name. So anyway, It just it takes me back to funny memories as a kid when adults would just really kill a kid's name. And so our special guest, Anthony Astbury, is on the show today. He from the UK, and so he's 5 hours different time than me right now. So he is doing this a bit late on his side. So I appreciate you staying up, and congratulations, by the way, because Anthony has just had his third child, a boy. And so, Anthony, welcome to Strong by Design.
Chris, welcome. Even in your intro, there's already a couple of kind of points there that I think we could have delved into, because people don't realize how much work it is doing podcasts, and I kind of commend you. Anybody over, I said I did a podcast course when I first started through London Real, who've got big podcast, and did their podcast course. And I remember Brian Rose saying, people come up to him and say, I've got a podcast. And he says, how many episodes have you got? And they're like, 6 or 10. And he's like, you haven't got a podcast. Like, until you've got 25, 50, 100, what have you. And we're up to 125, I think it is 26. So anybody that's got anywhere near over like 50, I appreciate, because it's hard work, but it's great for networking. And that's, you said, we become kind of friends in the deep conversation of an hour. And that's where the kind of, it's priceless conversations that you can create.
It's a great point that you've just made too, is because think of how many conversations you have with people and the length of them, or the depth in which you go in those conversations. And most of them are in passing, very brief, maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10, and kind of just about normal day-to-day things, but not really about big life questions and meaning and purpose. So when someone like you and I, who don't know each other, who didn't know each other, then we connect for over an hour and talk prior to and after the podcast, and here we are again, you really get to know somebody on a whole different level, maybe even better than people that are in your everyday life, which is pretty amazing, right?
Yeah. And well, do you know what? I think for me also, I know people's attention spans are shot to pieces now, and people, Instagram reels and YouTube reels, shorts or whatever it is, are so popular because people are so kind of desperate for immediate quick fix and content and stuff like that. But I still enjoy the long form conversation. I like to listen to podcasts that aren't just sped up 3 speed. I want to sit and I think in the hour, 2 hours podcast, you can unpack stuff that in the short, sharp interviews you're never going to get, because people give their first answer, and you don't get to dig deep. So that's where I think, like for yourself and me, I like listening to, and I like recording long form, because you can build up a real relationship with someone.
Yes. It's almost like I probably need, this is going to sound really weird, but really weird is always entertaining too. If I actually podcast with my own wife, I bet we would have the types of conversations that she would really like me to have with her. And I know that sounds like weird or a strange husband thing to say, but what I mean is, everyone who is married with children knows life is jam-packed. There's no time for anything really, especially good one-on-one time anymore, unless it's in the wee hours of the day, either early in the morning or late at night when you're absolutely exhausted. There's no time for really good, deep conversation like there used to be, when we would talk and dream together and have these one-on-one moments prior to, the chaos of children and the 50 million things that need to happen every single day. So if you want to have a great talk with somebody, maybe consider podcasting, and then podcast with all your friends, family members, and important people in your life, and finally make that time.
Do you know what, Chris? You've said something there that's really important. I heard a while ago someone talk about podcast, and let's say that something happened to you now, and you had an accident and you died. The joy is that forever your kids have got hours and hours and hours of listening to Dad if they wanted to.
That's true.
And I heard that for me, hopefully you and I have probably got about 40 odd years left at least, so we should be good. But I realized that, the content you're laying down is kind of priceless, not just to listeners around the world, across the world, etc., but maybe to even your your friends or family who love that kind of, just listening to you because they miss you or they want to hear from more from you. So, yeah, podcasting changed my life. I know it's something we'll touch on.
I've often thought of that. I lost a brother of mine 10 years ago. We just passed his 10-year anniversary since he passed away. And I saw a short video of him saying hello to his nephew with his wife, Jen. And I haven't seen my brother move or talk in a number of years because I haven't watched any videos of him. And it was very moving for me to see this shared video on Facebook of my brother prior to he died of brain cancer, and it was a pretty awful process in terms of him being bedridden for better part of a year before he passed. So to see him just being Dave, being what I remembered as my brother in video, and a lot of us, it is priceless. It is priceless, and I can I have great memories of him and I can run it in my mind, but then to see it and the value of good pictures, but it's certainly a video. And yes, I've thought about that too, is like, if my kids ever run out of or start to need a little bit more daddy, an injection of daddy in their life, all they have to do is go to YouTube or go to the podcast, and they'll never run out of things to watch and listen to. So it does kind of give me that extra this serves so many purposes, and there's another one. There's another one it serves, is that people that are close to me or miss me still can connect to me.
That's it. Also on that, things like YouTube, you don't have to make the videos public. So, I've spoke to people that would just create their own family videos and just keep them as private, but someone could access them. And I was like, yeah, that's nice stuff.
Yes, it's absolutely 100% true. I don't think a lot of people realize that. I don't think a lot of people know that. You can have unlisted content, private content, public content. There's a lot of different ways to go, but everybody essentially can be a YouTuber. It just depends on how far you want to go with it. So our guest, Anthony, as I said, he's on the other side of the waterway there that divides us, Florida to the UK. They've got the Atlantic Ocean on a diagonal. And as I said, we connected a few weeks ago for his podcast, The Whole Man Academy, and had such a great conversation and went down a lot of different directions. And I wanted to kind of continue it in a way, but also to get to know him a little bit more, since I was the guest on his show. I wanted to know his story. And I think that's really the only way to know why you're doing what you're doing today, is to know the man that you were 10 years ago and what led to, this big thing that you're doing now in the world. So take us back, if you would, Anthony, and tell us a little bit more about the type of man that you were, the life that you were living, and what you were feeling, and why you needed to make a change.
I think I can learn to kind of bullet point my life, or, you can kind of give it a timeline. And I mean, I was a lad that grew up primarily in the countryside. So I liked the outdoors and, running and football and bike riding and all the stuff that goes horse riding. So I was probably should never have been destined to be working in an office environment, because that was going to kill me basically. But that's what I ended up doing. But just as I'd started working in London as I was a 18-year-old, I wanted to go into radio, film and television, but I needed a job. So I got a job working for a company. I didn't really know what they did. And it turns out they were one of the biggest companies in the world, like Glencore, which was one of the enormous kind of precious metals trading companies across the world. And probably if I'd have known how big they were, I'd have been so scared I wouldn't have gone for the interview. But, when you're young and you have no cares and worries, you're a bit more free and loose with it. But in my early 20s, I had a collapsed lung. So, which is called a spontaneous pneumothorax, which means your lung just collapses for whatever reason. And I was told that, I've never looked up the stats, but I was told by the medical establishment that I dealt with that, I think 80% of people it happened to were male with dark hair who were like athletic build, and about 5'11", it was my e-fit. But that really knocked me because I loved playing football primarily. And for 6 months after I had a pretty nasty operation, I couldn't do any exercise. And probably, you're an exercise loving man, and I have a feeling that a lot of your listeners will enjoy some form of exercise, no matter what it is. So I lost quite a lot of weight because I couldn't do anything for at least 6 months. And that was the first thing that got me interested in the health and fitness learnings, which we'll come on to. Because basically I would look at like Men's Health magazine, and I'd look at the guy on the front cover, and I was like, I want to be that guy. I want to be on the front cover of Men's Health, or at least look like I could be, if that makes sense. So that started me on that journey of health, fitness, muscle, personal development. But I wasn't looking at my mindset too much because I was too busy in the city. So I worked in the city in trading and then broking for nearly just under 20 years. And I worked in fuel oil, I worked in carbon emissions, I worked in UK power, European power trading, and finished off setting up a liquid petroleum gas shipping derivatives desk to trade the shipping routes going across the world, which I didn't particularly enjoy. And that was the problem. So, the fast-paced world of broking and trading is kind of like Wolf of Wall Street for a while. But one day it starts to wear thin because you had to be, if you're dealing with European markets, I had to be in at 6:45 in the morning, which meant you had to be up at 5:30. And then you'd finish work, and not every night, but some nights you'd go out with clients and you'd go to a restaurant and then a bar and then a nightclub, and you'd leave at sometimes 3 or 4 in the morning, and you'd just go back to your desk and sleep under your desk, or you'd have an hour in bed at home and then get up and go and do it all again. So that was
I remember not that same scenario, but I remember really, in those early 20s, you really almost feel invincible, like you can get away with stretching yourself out and, getting up early for work and pushing it and staying out late and really getting the only 2-3 hours maybe of sleep, but that's only last so long. I mean, you hit burnout on that, especially if it's for you, it seems like more of a pattern, more frequent. That's burning the candle at both ends.
We spoke just before we recorded about coffee, and that was actually, I didn't even drink coffee back then because it shows when you're young, like you say, I was fit, healthy, and I went to the gym pretty much every day, nearly, at least 5 days a week. So I counteracted the sitting for 200 hours a month at my desk with exercising a lot, which helped. And that was good. And anyway, I was interested in money and girls and football and the gym, and that's about it for a while. And family was very important to me. And then basically that was great until I got to my mid-30s. And then also you used to have to go away at weekends with clients, which sounds great when you're young because you'd go to Ibiza and skiing, and some people would go to Vegas or places like that. But again, it wears thin because some weekends you just want to stay home and do nothing, and you're like, no, you're going to go out, and when you're entertaining clients, it's up to you to make sure they have a good time. You're babysitting, so they can act like a cock and do whatever they want to do, and you have to kind of pick the pieces up and say sorry to people or pay the bill and what have you, and make sure everybody gets their flights and everything. So like everything in life, there's good and bad parts of it. But around the time when I started to look around and think, is this it for me? Is this what I'm going to carry on doing? I then got interested in obstacle course racing. And I think for me, that was my kind of, I needed a side adventure. I needed something different. And I'd stopped playing football because I'd broken my ankle, and I'd just kind of, got bored of every Saturday. So I started doing the Spartan races and all the different ones like that. And because I had a high level of fitness, and we're competitive, what men are like, or most of us, we want to do well and see how far we can go. And the first race I did was a Men's Health magazine, kind of a city race around Battersea Power Station in London. And I'd never done it before. I had all the wrong kit, but I still came like 200th out of a couple of thousand. And I was like, hey, wow, if I did some proper training and actually knew what I was doing and didn't have shoes that the laces, came undone after 100 meters and stuff, I could have got in maybe the top, whatever. And that got me on the path of wanting to become not really big and muscly, but not a long distance runner. I wanted to have like a soldier's body, because then you should be able to run, swim, carry, climb, crawl, etc. So I used all my focus on doing that whilst I was working, and then realized there was a world championships, which goes around the world. Sometimes it's in Canada, sometimes the US, etc. And that was my big focus. Just as I got into personal development with Tony Robbins, I also qualified for the World Championships that was out in Ohio. And I flew out there and stayed out in Ohio for like 10 days and raced, represented the country, and raced against, all the elite athletes and in my age group as well, not the elite, because you're like, listen, I was 35, 36 at that point. I'm not going to beat the 22-year-olds. Let's be honest. So you'd have the 5-year age range, I don't know what it was, 32 to 36 or something like that. And you could at least then measure up against men of your age. And that was great. And that was at the time in the city. I'd looked around and said, this isn't for me anymore. And funnily enough, my girlfriend, Emma, or now partner and mother of my 3 children, I've never said that before, but 3 children, she'd said to me, hey, I know you're a bit disillusioned with things. You should listen to podcasts. And I said, I'm too busy. I'm busy. I haven't got time for listening to podcasts. And then I was like, I listened to 1 and then 2. And I listened to a guy called James Swanwick, who does a podcast out in the States. And then a guy called Andy Murphy, who does a podcast called Mindset by Design. And then I first heard the words Tony Robbins. And I was like, hey, this Date with Destiny thing and this Unleash the Power Within thing sounds interesting. I'll have a bit of that. So I went to their events, and that helped me with getting a coach move away from the city, because it's very hard when you've got the trappings of success of the BMW convertible, the townhouse, the expensive holidays to Miami and Dubai and blah, 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 to then think that you're going to walk away from it all and follow a possibly less well-paid path. And that's what I did. It wasn't easy. And I moonwalked back from the edge of the cliff several times of leaving, because it's a scary thing to, kind of chuck in the well-paid job that people think is safe, and go and follow your dreams. So I finally did that. And then we moved from London to the Cotswolds. So that's about an hour and a half north of London in the countryside, which is a beautiful area. And, before we lived on a nice development of houses, whereas now our house looks onto fields and horses front and back, which is lovely. And that's kind of at that point where I'd got into personal development and men and mindset and etc. And of course, I used to work with hundreds and hundreds of men, so I knew very well how they think, which isn't always good all the time. I'm not sure if all women would like to know how men think. And that kind of brought us up to the point after I'd left the city that I then had the idea of the Whole Man Academy. So I'll let you jump back in at that point.
Wow, that's great. No, I love how you brought it back. Kind of full circle, but we can get inside inside your world a little bit in terms of what, obviously you hit a certain level of success, as you said. You had the possessions, you had the fun trips, and the many late nights enjoying yourself, but still coming back to this, is this it kind of question, which I think so many people have. And we've heard so many people, famous people, celebrities, people who've attained unbelievable wealth and notoriety, still with this same question, is this it? And certainly, without even going into the spiritual realm to answer that type of question, I think all of us are searching for meaning and purpose in life. And is our purpose just purely to fill our bank account and to go on fun trips with our buddies or with our spouses or with our families? I mean, who are we serving? Who are we helping? Who are we connecting with? And I think that's really what most of us are longing for is connection and relationship. And to be acknowledged, to be heard, to listen, and to be given opportunity to speak, and to be in a room with other people that are of the same mind and have the same aspirations and things. And this is what you've created with the Whole Man Academy. And so tell me a little bit more about exactly what this looked like in those first few years prior to COVID, obviously being kind of the dividing line, which changed a lot of businesses and changed a lot of the way people moved in the world in terms of they had one business model and they completely had to rethink and adapt and make changes. And some completely went underwater, several actually, and others found a whole new vein of opportunity, and are stronger for it today because of it. So take us back, 5 or 6 years and tell me a little bit more specifically what Whole Man Academy is for our listeners. And then we can, kind of talk about all the different shifts and obstacles that you had along the way.
Yeah, I mean, I think when people talk about following their passion or, doing, there's the old saying, do what you love, you'll never work a day again. I mean, I think at some point you still have to do some work and not, you can't always have 100% fun, some stuff. But I was trying to work out how to combine, a few of my great loves or my great interests, which was, mindset, fitness, optimization, I guess you could say, of body and mind. And also, who do I know a lot about? Again, I said I've, worked with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of men. And, I've been a man all my life. So I've been living and breathing it. And you realize that, men and women are very different in some ways, in a lot of ways. And men also don't often get together to talk. Now, I think there was a great podcast I did with a chap, I think I mentioned him when we spoke previously, called Neil Kramer, but he spoke about how the decline in the church, even if you don't want to show the interest in the spirituality side, it's the community which the church would bring together. And that, for example, is what has been lost, in the UK. I mean, people can argue it's great to have a real diverse population, but diversity generally brings sometimes division because you've got completely different ethnicities and backgrounds, and you find that people just divide and create little communities of their own and don't come together as one. That's another rabbit hole to go down. So I very much looked at it and said, okay, well, how can we just get men together to talk to start with? I mean, now in the US, I think, or in the UK, it's something like 4-to-1 male to female ratio of suicide. Now, so why is it not only that a lot of people are taking their own life, but why is it that men are doing it a lot more than women? Now, I think there's a lot to that, but one of those things is that women find more spaces to talk generally, whereas men look at the gym. Often you'll have women might go in together with their friends and they'll work out and they'll maybe grab a coffee. A lot of men will be hood up, earphones, do the weights, listen, go home. Now, nothing wrong with that, but that kind of gives you a picture of often what men are like. And, men often won't go if they've got a health issue, won't go to the doctor. It's like they'll just, keep quiet. And when it comes to emotions as men, I mean, I'm 44, I think. I had to check that yesterday. But, we've not grown up with it being okay to express your emotions. Now, on that, it's always an interesting one because I was saying that doesn't mean that you go online taking pictures of yourself looking sad all the time and posting all your woes online. I think that means you finding a close, strong network of men around you, or women, but men around you who you can say whatever you want to and say, Chris, I've cocked something up, or things are bad, or I'm so tired because we've got a new baby, or blah, blah, blah. And you go, hey, yeah, I'll listen, not say, oh, stop being silly and get on with it. So that was where the idea of the Whole Man Academy was born, me recreating not Tony Robbins events, but events that are aspirational events that men want to come to. And our first one was in 2018. And we had, I wasn't sure if anybody was going to turn up, even though your friends said they're going to come. We've all done that. We go, yeah, I'll be there. And then you might not.
Yeah, I'll be there.
And we had, and then the last minute you get that text saying, oh, this has happened. So yeah, September 2018, our first ever Whole Man Academy event was in London, and we had 25 guys turn up, and we hired a really cool space. And this was the other important thing. I didn't want it to be guys getting together in some crappy hotel with sticky carpets and funny chairs. That feels a bit like crap therapy. I wanted it to be cool events in cool spaces that you feel pretty relaxed, and you want to kind of how can I put it? You want to tell people you're going there. So yeah, first event was 25 guys, and everybody after was like, when's your next event? So 2019 we held, I can't remember, like 7 or 8 events. I won't bore you with all of them, but our biggest one was in London where you had 65 guys come along. And Geeves and Hawkes, which is the Savile Row suit tailors, which is kind of a world famous, classic old suit tailors. They've got this stunning headquarters down Savile Row in London, which is a really famous street. And they basically said, look, we love your idea, so we'll allow you to host a couple of events there in the evenings. And, one of the events, we had 200 people at a kind of a launch party there.
Wow.
So you can feel how this is snowballing nicely. And we know we're coming to 2020. So in 2019, we'd done events, and, we'd had over 300 guys or more come to the events in London. And we'd started, sending e-letters out with mindset tips and strength tips. And I'd share things like, it could be Critical Bench or the podcast or something, saying that these are good resources. And then, just as felt like we were tipping the edge of progress, obviously the government decided that for, how can I put it, for a prolonged period of time, then they wouldn't allow people to have their freedom anymore. And that completely cocked up our progress. But as you said, you can either sit and moan about it and, just lay in your garage and hold your knees and rock backwards and forwards and cry, or you can say, okay, well, we've got to roll with the punches. And I'd always I'd always wanted to have a podcast, only because I'd listened to some great ones and thought I'd like to do that and connect with guys. So I, threw some money at the challenge to make it, to fold time and let the podcast be released quicker than if I'd have just spent my time working it all out myself. And it was, I can't remember, early 2020, as lockdowns had started, that we released podcast 1 and 2, and I cringe at the first few because, you didn't know what you were doing and stuff, what it's like. But, fast forward, I mean, our biggest episode was with David Gandy, who's a kind of international style icon. You might not. So he was a guy that was on the billboard of Times Square for the Dolce & Gabbana advert. And, it helps. He's got 1 million followers on Instagram. So when he shared our podcast on there, it helps with the analytics. Okay. But I mean, that one had, I think, like 40,000 downloads or something, which for a little podcast of just me talking to guys is decent, is all right. And do you know what? There's a couple of things on the podcasts. Number one for me is, of course, it's great that you create positive, thought-provoking content for men to listen to. And you get messages from guys who, of course, you've never met, who say, hey, that thing you said about this or that, or strength or mindset or family, faith, whatever, that's really helped me. And you're like, great. But also, big thing for me is what I realized, I was trying to recreate what I lost when I left the city, which is I really missed being around loads of guys. Because I'd be on that.
I think a lot of us, especially, you're a guy who grew up playing football, and in the States, obviously we call it soccer because we I don't know why they stole the same name to make a different sport. Hey, God, I'll never understand that one. I had nothing to do with it. American football is very much different from obviously football internationally. But you were a kid. You were on sports teams. You grew up with buddies you'd go on bike rides with or play roughhouse with and did organized sports with, right? And then what happens? One day we wake up, we're older, we're adults, and we don't have this great networking system that we once had. A lot of us don't. Some of us are fortunate to have that. But you obviously genuinely missed that, all the things that came with it, all the positives that came with it. And again, that goes back to what I had said earlier we're all longing, I think, for connection and to be in relationship with people that feels meaningful, that feels that is life-giving, that fills you up and keeps your cup full. Because I think so many of us are just constantly pouring out into the world. and there's nothing
Yeah.
rejuvenating or pouring back into us. And so what you created was this great network that's very healthy for men to talk and to mingle and to converse with each other about more than just the weather, and go a few levels and layers deeper. And that means something and resonates with people. And then when they get a taste of it, as you said after the first event, when are we doing this again? Because I want more of that.
Well, and Chris, you said you've used a term which I really like as well, like bold and bold conversations. I think in life, if you're going to live a really good life, you're gonna piss some people off. You've got to, you're going to have some people that don't like what you say. And that was for me at the events. You'd say, look, might talk about some quite delicate topics, or just, even it could be sport or what have you. And you might have someone say, no, I disagree with that. And you're like, great, what can I learn from you? Not, right, well, you're not allowed to come anymore, or I'm going to cancel you, or what have you. It's like, listen, the more conversation we have, and often with people we don't agree with, the more we broaden our horizons. And we had one of our events where two of the panelists had some issues in the past, and one of the guys who was a kind of award-winning, let's call him life coach with NLP and et cetera, said, what I'm seeing, unfortunately, is a lot of your pain is coming from your own thoughts. And I could see that was like for want of a better phrase, like a knife twisted in them, because the truth hurts. And when you blame everybody else, or you're always kind of looking for that, well, I'm, this, and this has happened to me, and that's why. And you say, ultimately, you get to decide how you feel. For a lot of people, they don't want to hear it, because the old saying is like, you can't handle the truth. So,
that's right.
But for me, I was like, that kind of event, instead of us all sitting there just saying, yes, the same thing. I love it when someone says, Chris, you're wrong about that, I think, in a respectful manner. And you go, oh, great. Tell me how I'm wrong, because we're not always right about everything. Right. You've seen that in the last 2 years,
Yeah, it's a life experience thing. And we all have different perspective, and we all have different pasts and learned experiences. And so at least to be open, that's how we grow. And no one grows in comfort. we grow when we're uncomfortable. Right. And so I definitely, as much as I will get defensive sometimes, certainly with people who know me best, when they have to be bold and speak the truth to me, and I might initially not have the best response, it'll at least sink in, and I'll think on it, and then I'll come back to it and be like, you're right. And you have to at least have that awareness that, people who know me best oftentimes want the best for me. And I'm not always going to be super receptive to the things they have to say. But being in a room of other men that are at least willing to step out and be a little uncomfortable in order to grow. Once you get a taste for that, you want more of it.
Well, you've said it there. I think it sums it up nicely. We want guys to get to want to have a taste of that. And, we say kind of you're not going to bull people, as the saying terms of, if a man's not where he wants to be in life, and we know plenty of men who want to improve one or two aspects. You said the term the whole man academy. The reason why it's whole man is because a man is made up of so many parts, and we might have guys who come to me and say, look, I've got loads of money in the bank, I've got a great relationship, I love my job, but I'm really overweight. And I don't seem to be able to work out what should I do first. And you'd be like, right, let's sort out what you're eating, what you're drinking, how you're sleeping, how you just start on the basics. Then you might have a guy that's got an incredible physique and a great relationship, but he's completely skint and he's got no money in the bank. And you might be able to help him with that side. Then you've got the relationship. Some guys I know have got everything apart from a partner. And if they haven't got a partner, they're not probably going to have kids. And you and I know how important and how life-changing and amazing having kids is, and tiring. But, so each man has got his own, we call it silent struggle, because a man will often, you're not going to go around and be like, hey, yeah, just let you all know that I'm skint, or I'm overweight, or I'm desperate to have kids, but I can't find the right partner. It will just be like, I'll just keep quiet and stuff. So the Whole Man Academy is born out of that concept of when you become a whole man, then I think that I hate the term on point, but your health, your mindset, your fitness, your faith, whatever that wants to be for you, is all at least, let's say, an 8 out of 10. And you're kind of living life with a smile on your face, because that's the guy that you'll find people want to be around and do business with and sleep with, marry, etc., have kids with, and that kind of stuff.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, you get a lot more. They say, you get more flies with honey, than with vinegar, right? You'll catch more. It's like that in life too. There's something that's more appealing about someone who doesn't look like they want to rip your arms off as you approach them. When you're walking past somebody who looks confident, standing tall, but with a smile on their face, you're more receptive to what they have to say. You're more interested in carrying on a conversation with them or engaging with them versus, you get a lot of people anymore who look depressed, angry as they just move in life. And so, it's, I try to get that what my wife will call resting bitch face, right? The RBF. Yeah. Like if she's referring to, and I'm making a light comment about it, making a joke really, but there are people, that's how they move in the world. They move with this resting face of like agony or anger or bitterness, and you're not going to really appeal to others or connect well with others. But it's the people that are more welcoming and friendly and smiling and those types of things. It seems little, but gosh, body language is everything, isn't it? Right? And you're a Tony Robbins guy. Tony Robbins talks all the time about like body language and these things. I
was very lucky when I went to. I've been to all of the. I've been to Unleash the Power Within, and I spent 10 days in Tenerife at Life and Wealth Mastery, which is really interesting as well. But the great one was Date with Destiny in Miami, when I went with a couple of mates from the UK, and we hired a house.
I know people who attended that.
Yeah, really good. We did the usual thing, which was we flew in, got our hire car, packed our stuff in the house, went out to get something to eat, and realised we were driving on the wrong side of the road, which is good start. Because you're like, hey, that car's coming straight towards us. And you're like, oh. But I was very lucky. I had a life coach, my own life coach, who I'd acquired through the Tony Robbins events. And she was a coach at the event. So when I flew to Miami, she came out and met me, and she would take me aside of the event and stand at the side and say, this is what is going to happen. This is how it works, and this is why he's doing this, and kind of unpack it for me. So it wasn't just because it is a show and it's incredible, and you'd see people there, that were suicidal, that could have their life change. But I got to see a little peek behind the curtain, and all it did was make me want more, if that makes sense. Never did I, as in with our events, what I did was I've just brought in a mix of guys. We had world championship fighters, footballers, guys from media, yoga instructors. I've on the podcast, I've had Maori warriors, style icons, special forces guys, the whole mix. Because you can listen to sometimes a guy for an hour, but if you take one great thing from that hour, that could be life changing for you.
Yeah, it really did. It really does. The company I work for, Critical Bench, we believe in ongoing learning and growth opportunities. And so we're constantly in pursuit of attending, different live events and just, iron sharpens iron approach, right, to life. And our boss, my dear friend of mine and my boss now for the last 10 years, Mike Westerdahl, is part of multiple masterminds, has been for years. And because he realizes, I'm investing in myself. Me going around and spending time with other people who I'm intimidated by is good. It's good to step into those, like we just said a moment ago, being uncomfortable and putting yourself out there much like what we did when we were kids, stepping on stage to perform in front of other people, or in this
Yeah.
environment, being at a table, sitting at a table for dinner with other people speaking that you're all learning and listening to. But then at a table now you're a much more intimate thing, because now you're sitting across from 6, 7, 8 other people, other men who maybe are 8 and 9 figure business, owners, and you feel small time. So I mean, this is good stuff. You want to be in those environments, because this is that 10 or 15-minute conversation with just one of those guys can completely reshape your life. It can change the direction that you move in your business, in your personal life. That one relationship could be that a stepping stone that you didn't even realize what was possible.
Yeah.
And change everything. So I'm sure you've heard testimony from many of these men who have attended over the years now, have had massive change in their business and their personal life. Are there any that come to mind right now? And I'm sure there are, that you'd like to share.
Yeah, I'll tell you what's nice is when what we realized was that just coming to events wasn't going to be enough, because it's like that. It's just like going to any big event. You get all hyped up and you're there for 1 or 2 or 3 days or whatever. And then you come home and firstly, you mistakenly tell your partner how exciting it was, and they're never going to understand what you mean because they weren't there.
Correct.
And then, it's like, and then, Monday morning comes around and it's just you again with your laptop, and you're like,
Yep.
I'll have another coffee and then I'll get started and I'll watch another YouTube video. So for us, it was like, well, what's the problem there? Often it's accountability and focus for guys.
That's right.
So we said, okay, well, if we launched just a small like life coaching, so you just work with a few guys, but it wouldn't just be we're having 5 sessions. It'll be, listen, you're with me for 1 or 2 or 3 years, and maybe we speak once a month, but we keep you on track. And one of the guys I worked with, I mean, I could list, he was a bit overweight, he was drinking, he wasn't very happy, he didn't have a partner, his business wasn't going very well, like just all the things were a bit down. And I really helped him, not because I'm such a master of mindset, but try and do the simple things of asking some good questions to say to him, well, like, what do you want? What do you want out of life? And one of the things was, this was before lockdowns that we started this. He said he had a good job, well paid, 5 days a week in the office. And he said, I just wish that like 1 day a week I could work from home. And this was before people had working from home. And I was like, cool, what day would that be? I wanted him to visualize it, get a picture. And he said, well, Monday wouldn't make sense, would it? Because that's like, and then, well, Wednesday would be a good day. Okay, good. What would you do on a Wednesday? What would your day look like? Well, actually, I wouldn't have a 45-minute commute to work. I wouldn't have to wear my suit and tie. I could actually crack on at 8 o'clock. I'd probably be finished by 3. Great. What would you do then? I'd go and play tennis. And you could see someone like light up.
Yeah.
Oh, that would really work. Yeah. And that would mean that Thursday and Friday didn't feel like a long week because it had kind of been broken up a bit. I said, great. Who have you got to ask for this to happen? And he was like, they wouldn't say yes. So I literally was like, yeah, here's your phone, give him a call. And he phoned work. And of course they were like, yeah, cool. Like, as long as you're happy, as long as you're, creating the work and doing the business, then we don't really mind. And it's a really simple thing, a conversation. Wow. But for a lot of men, who else do you have that conversation with? Because your mates aren't there for that. So for him, years later, we ended up working for quite a few years. He lost weight, really enjoyed his job, became a good earner, found a partner, has got married, has got a little girl. Like everything rose nicely to become a happy, content family man instead of a slightly pissed off with the world, frustrated man. And I would say, what's that worth? To him, who knows what it's worth? But to a lot of men, you look and you go, yeah, do you know what? Like when I worked in the city, I used to say, when I got to the stage of earning, 70, 80,000 a year, and then you'd get bonuses as well, which, that was 6, 7, 8, 9 years ago now. So it was a decent salary. But I was like, when I really didn't like my job, you could have offered me double that and I still wouldn't be happy because it's still the same 10 hours a day doing something you don't want to do. So yes, I'd have driven a Lamborghini probably, and I'd have had a penthouse and a house in Spain and whatever. But 10 hours a day, I'd be upset with myself for just not living the life that I wanted to and sleepwalking through life. So we aim to take that guy, not a guy that's suicidal, because I'm not, I'm not there to deal with a guy that's thinking of taking his own life. That's not my area of expertise. But we want the guy that's in that gap, who's pissed off with life, knows he wants more, and actually wants to do something about it. Because a lot of people say they want to do it, but they can't be bothered.
That's right. I happen to just see, it's great what you've just said, and there's so many different ways we could dissect that and create more podcast content out of it. Really good points. Yeah. I saw a short video from The Rock recently, Dwayne Johnson, and he a very simple thing, very simple idea. One day or day one. Like, I'm going to do that one day, or today is day one of doing that thing. And I think so many of us just need to be willing to take that first step, and it can just be a baby step. And this is where so many people get hung up and stuck, is day one never comes. It just becomes one day for years. One day. And had you not had that conversation with that guy about what's your ideal schedule look like? Well, Wednesdays I could work from home and I save all this commute time and I could play tennis again and I could, really look forward to my week. Yeah. And, and that was a ripple effect that changed everything in his life. As you said, he got healthier. He found a partner. He had a child. Like, maybe these things don't happen if not for that moment with you. And I think there's a lot of these moments in life that create these ripples, but we have to be open to the idea of this. We have to step into day one and not be stuck in one day. Put yourself out there.
I really like that, because I know for some people, then it's just they're not ready at that point. And, I think I knew when I worked in the city, when I wanted to leave, I probably for 2 years procrastinated, and someone could have looked at me and said, "Oh, you're procrastinating." And I was like, "I know, but I'm so scared at the moment. I can't quite do it." And then one day, someone has to ask you to future kind of, pace out in the future how painful it's going to be in a year or 5 years time. If you're going to keep doing the same thing, overeating, or, too much porn, or you're, pissing around on your phone the whole time, or you're not paying your partner much attention. You go 1 year, a week out, big deal, doesn't really matter. You go a month, 6 months, a year out, and you start looking, being like, man, this is painful. I need to do something about it. And that's where, for some guys, they know they should, but some guys are never ready, and you can give them all the advice, all the tips, but there's the old saying, at some point you've got to do your own press-ups.
That's right. 100% correct. At some point, as they say, I'll give the clean version, crap or get off the pot, Yep. It's like, crap or get off the toilet, like you got to hit the go button. And it can be really hard. I get it. And the longer we put it off, the harder it can be. Just like a hard conversation or a difficult confrontation that we need to have. The longer you avoid it and go around it and avoid it, the harder that's going to be. So this is wonderful. It's really, I love what you're doing and who you're reaching. We need more men having meaningful conversation and connection with each other. I'm part of a Saturday morning group. It's part of an ongoing kind of men's group, but also just married couples as well, when the spouses are able to be part of it. But it's a Saturday morning call. And the group there's a core group, but there's new people who've come on with this. And it's something I look forward to on Saturday mornings. It's at 7 a.m. And it's just men talking about about their faith, but talking about life, talking about being good men, being good husbands, being good fathers, stepping up in the world. And gosh, if more men just did something simple like that once a week, where they connected with other people and had deep conversations about life and showing up in the world and being better human beings, we would make the world better. But we have to be action takers.
It's a very confusing time in the world at the moment, and I know your last few podcasts have been great topics on the let's say the destruction of the family unit, and also men and masculinity. And over here, I mean, I've had conversations in the last few days with women who find it a real struggle, that they feel like they're being ousted because they're being described as people with a womb instead of women these days. And you're like, I mean, you see what's happened with Budweiser and them and their latest campaign, and it's mind-boggling. And I think it goes back to one of the podcasts I had, where the guy who again lives out in the States, but he's an English guy, said that plenty of men are drifting without a compass, and he links that very much back to spirituality, and that because let's say in the UK, the declining church numbers are easy to see. You don't have to go too far to realize that has been kind of, whether you think it's deliberate or not, has been kind of eroded from normality. And that's very sad, because again, I think it's community is one of the most important things, especially when, and we'll mention that, but when you've got family, because kids need other kids and mums need other mums and dads need to talk to other dads around. And maybe church would be where people would, congregation, and sometimes just chew the fat and have a drink and give each other a cuddle and stuff. So it's I see that as a big problem for men at the moment. It's about so many guys are, and I'm holding my phone up because they're too busy addicted to their phones.
Yes, no doubt.
And I don't blame them, because they're deliberately created that way to be like a slot machine, that then they don't look up and don't look around them. And it's easy to just be narrow and look at your little computer screen and play, sports games, or just scrolling mindlessly and not realizing there's a whole world out there.
There is a whole world out there. And obviously much of our conversation today has been just about connection and finding purpose and finding an adventure to be part of. As we all want to be on an adventure. We, especially when we're children, life is an adventure when you're a child. Every day is kind of an adventure, right? And as we get older, we start dreaming less and we start living less adventurously, taking less risks and things, right? But yeah, I and I'm sure several of our listeners, I attach a lot of my purpose and my meaning with my faith, my spirituality. But there's something that struck me as you were talking, and I'm just going to say something that's quoting C.S. Lewis. Anybody who's a truth seeker should know who that is. He's one of the most influential men of the 20th century. Just so you know, C.S. Lewis said this. He said, I pray because the need flows out of me all the time, waking and sleeping. It doesn't change God. It changes me. And, when I listen to men much smarter than I, men that are have much more life experience than I mean, look at a guy like the hardest working guy in Hollywood, they say, is Steve Harvey. If you know who that is, he's the host of shows and radio shows and, game shows, talk shows, all kinds of things. But he's also actually quite the speaker, and really well equipped to reach people through his comedy and his humor, but his so much truth in what he says. And he talks a lot about tapping into his power source, and he starts his day off in prayer and meditation. And it's the only way that he's able to even just recharge and keep himself going. So, I mean, that's just one other angle with today's conversation, is for people to recharge, to have some quiet time and some time of peace and quiet, because the world is hustle and a bustle and a moving a million miles an hour, and we're all kind of caught up in it. And sometimes we just need to separate and unplug, as you kind of iterated a moment ago, getting away from the devices and the technology, and just being mindful and kind of like listening for God's voice.
Chris, our second biggest podcast, and probably the most popular in the fact that it hasn't had like 40,000 views or downloads yet, because I only did it a while ago, but it had hundreds of comments and what have you, because it was a deep and meaningful. We spoke spirituality, home educating kids, some really interesting topics that trigger some people, which I think is great because it creates some conversation. But his thing was about contemplation, and people don't allow themselves, because they're so busy. People need a cessation of activities to just do nothing and contemplate, and it seems so alien to most people to be like, what do you mean just do nothing? What about work and emails and Instagram and kids and family and sport and blah 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 and all emails and da da. And like, when do people give themselves time to actually sit and contemplate? It seems completely foreign to most people, and it was to me for quite a while. I've built it in more, but people are just on the go all the time, and they don't allow themselves to switch off.
Yeah. I think the ultimate goal, and just kind of like bringing everything to kind of a final statement, I think ultimately men and women alike, we're all seeking the same thing, which is peace in our minds, peace in our life. And when we're not at peace, we're living in uncertainty and chaos, right? And so peace, I think, can only come from finding our meaning and really tapping into our very best. And I think for me, that comes from getting down on my knees and praying, and reading truth from the Bible and focusing on that, but then applying these things in how I live my life. And I, by no means am I perfect. I mess up every single day, multiple times in terms of my interactions, probably, or having a short fuse with people that I love dearly, saying or doing the wrong thing with my kids. We all are going to mess up and make mistakes. But as I said before, it's the awareness and the seeking forgiveness in others, and getting past things and not letting things eat you from the inside out. For me, yeah, that piece really starts with connecting to my spiritual side and really strengthening my faith, but then walking in that in how I live my life, applying those truths to how I live my life. And people can say whatever they want, but the things that are wrong in the world, I think you can equate to the fact that we have been pulling God out of everything for the last 100 years globally. And do we think like we're healing or getting or working, towards a better future? I don't think so. I think we need to infuse and him more and connect more to him in order to heal and to get past a lot of these things. But I mean, the fact that people are arguing now about what a man and a woman is just shows you how bizarre and how weird and how confused life has gotten for people, because I knew the difference between a man and a woman when I was 3 years old.
You start to, sometimes you say you have to laugh because if not, you'd go mad. But I mean, it's funny over here that, I mean, I never used to think about politics, honestly, at all, probably until around probably till my 40s. I just didn't care because I was too busy just doing my own thing. And then I realized how much these clowns affect you and your family and your what have, especially with lockdowns and everything. And one of the puppets is the guy that's head of the Labour Party. And it's so funny when you've seen him over in this country be interviewed and they ask him basic questions like, well, can you say what is a woman? And you see these cretins like, because they know whatever they say, they're going to get slaughtered by someone, aren't they? And instead of just saying what should come from their head and their heart, they just kind of say, oh, well, and they just avoid the question with a load of word salad. And you just look and you go, wow, I consider myself a strong man. I don't just mean physically strong, but, I very much care for my family, and I would do anything for you if you needed it, etc., etc. And I look around at some of the men that are running the United States, that are running the UK, running other big organizations that usually start with just 3 letters. And you worry for the world because they are in a dire situation. And that's why,
yes,
even with our new baby arriving, just a week ago now, we decided, because we'd done our own research, that we don't need the medical establishment to be there prodding and poking us. So we had a free birth of just myself and my partner, Emma, and our 2 young boys were in the house when Emma had our 3rd baby. And it was beautiful. But people are so brainwashed to think that you must have, I know if people have got medical complications, then fine, but people are so brainwashed now to think they must do everything by what they're told is the way, that they can't comprehend. And you could relate this to religion as much as birth, as much as what you inject in your body, that people just go with whatever they get told on TV or in the news. And to tell them anything else is a step too far for some people.
Yeah. Well, I applaud you for kind of stepping out and being bold, as we said earlier. And we need more of that. We need more men that are willing to stand for truth and to speak up and not go quiet. It's the silent majority, if you will, that really has a lot of power, but not if they don't step up and say something.
Yeah, at some point,
right now we're letting the very loud minority get all the press.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think one of the really interesting things there is when you explain to people that there's only 1 or 2 companies that own nearly every company in the world.
Yeah. Yes.
And I've had great fun recently kind of educating people, because a lot of people will be very smart, but they'll be like, what do you mean? And I'll say there's 2 or 3 companies that if you trace it, it's not difficult, but you trace it back and they invest in nearly every big company in the world. The banks, the pharmaceutical companies, the food, the farming, all the different stuff. And when people start to realize that, they go, oh, okay, well, what does that mean? You say, well, maybe nothing. But if people that have got that much power have a certain way they want things to go, then it's very easy to, make things happen that trickle down the triangle and affect suddenly your day-to-day life. And I love just educating people on that, because they'll be like, oh, I'm going to go and look at more of this. You're like, good, go and educate yourself.
Yeah, exactly right. No, you're right. An educated person and a person who's fit in their mind and their body and their spirit, those are the people that these top dogs, these very wealthy and powerful people, are most afraid of. They fear people who are educated and bold and want to be fit and healthy. They want people who are relying on everyone else for support, who are lazy fools, who just say yes to everything that they hear and can't think for themselves. So it's it's a very strange. I mean, obviously, that's again a topic for another conversation for sure, and we've talked a little bit about that in past episodes on our podcast. But maybe we'll have to explore that one a little bit later this year. Have you back on?
Oh, I could talk about that stuff for hours.
I know. I'm sure you could. And I'll let the cat out of the bag. This will be the first time I've mentioned this on the podcast. We have an upcoming. It has not been recorded yet. It's on our calendar for being recorded. We have an upcoming kind of fun, but I'm sure it'll be very interesting. A conspiracy theory episode coming, and one of my coworkers, he's one of our video production specialists, terrific guy, real thinker, really well read. He is in the know on all of these different theories and things floating around in the ethers. And so we said, we have to do an episode with you where you maybe just talk about three of the many.
Yeah.
And we'll do like a panel. So it'll be 4 people. So they can just kind of have a round table discussion about these interesting conspiracy theories. I will not be part of the conversation, but it'll be recorded in early May and probably released in say June or something like that. But that'll be kind of a fun one, because I think there's a lot of things out there that people don't give much thought to or time of day, but then it's like, whoa, like big stuff,
Yeah, I like it. I think the more of those, I know people that had their podcasts, their platforms deleted, deplatformed, censored, what's the other one, like shadow banned. So suddenly your reach on Instagram goes from, thousands and thousands to like hundreds of people. And you type there, it could be at Chris Wilson and nothing will come up until you're like way down the list. So there's some very, very interesting topics to come. And I always say, I think it's important to question everything, because, if you don't, then you're just being a sheep, basically.
Yeah. Well, the greatest teachers, and I'll put Jesus up there as one of the greatest, or if not, arguably the greatest teacher we've ever seen. He taught with questions. Most of what he said was question based to get people to think and act on those thoughts. So this was so much fun. Anthony, please, the best places for people to go, obviously wholemanacademy.com would be a great place for people to go. Where else would you recommend them to get a feel for your content and where to continue to follow you?
Yeah, no, that'd be great. I mean, our website has everything on it, including our podcast, which is on Spotify and iTunes, and the video content is on YouTube. And also, the one thing, if people are interested, we send out the Whole Man Journal, which goes out 3 times a week to hundreds of men all across the world, which is insights to maximize your mindset, body, and performance. So we try and tie in, all the things that bring a whole man up to the level he wants. So you can find that on the website. And if not, just connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to connect with new people from wherever in the world, man, woman, and child, and kind of see where the conversation takes you.
Great. I appreciate you making all of this time. I know it's getting really late on your end, and I brushed on it earlier. And, it was, you said it yourself, you just had your 3rd child, and you have not yet named him. What are some of you must have at least some ideas or some possible options.
Yeah. This is it's a contentious issue because, naming a child is very important. And our 2 other boys are called Hudson and Bowie. So they're not kind of, Tom, Dick, Harry names. They're slightly different, but not too wacky. I'm not Elon Musk naming it children with random names. So for me, one of the names I like was Devon, which is a part of the UK, but I just like the name. But my partner's like, no. So she's got a few that she likes. So we're kind of at that stage where we've got to make a decision soon. But so we shall see. So, it is a tough one because you've both got, no one wants to name their child something that they don't like.
That's right.
So we shall see. It's tough.
Wow. Well, good. I can't wait to see what it is. I'll be following you closely and staying connected to you, so I find out what this 3rd boy's name is. But again, congratulations on that. It's great. We need more good men in the world, and you've produced 3 yourself. So you are holding up your end of the bargain, my friend. That's terrific. This has been a lot of fun. I knew it would be. So many great nuggets and takeaways for all of our listeners, and for you ladies out there who made it this far. First of all, I congratulate you, and please share this episode with your husband, because I'm sure he would like what we're talking about today. It means a lot if you would share it, because that's how our show reaches more people organically, is just people enjoying what they've heard and wanting to share it with somebody in their life. So I thank you in advance for doing that. Next week, we'll be back with a new episode here on Strong by Design. And we just thank you for joining us today. God bless you. Talk soon. Thank you so much for listening to the Strong by Design podcast. If you found value in today's episode, please subscribe so that more people can find out about our show. Plus, you don't want to miss any future episodes with the amazing guests and topics we have lined up for you.